Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the team of Physiokinesis and the Gene Box, I welcome you all. My name is Pooja Kanani, and I am the product manager at the Gene Box, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. So, as we all know, we're here in the middle of a lockdown, and the entire experience of being under the grip of a pandemic is very overwhelming, both physically and emotionally. So, we're trying to focus on the positives. And one of the positive things that we can focus on and, talk about is running. So, we have two experts and their teams with us. Ashish Pandya, who holds a master's degree in biochemistry and also has a patent under his name. He is a genomics expert. So he's joined us today. And of course, we have Dr. Shweta Varke, who is the founder of Physiokinesis and has over 18 years of experience under her belt. And she works extensively with runners of all levels. So coincidentally, today is DNA Day, and we are very excited to talk to you about this topic. So Ashish is going to first take us through a short presentation on the role of genetics in running performance. This will be followed by an extensive question and answer session where Dr. Varke and Ashish will answer all your queries. So I request you to send all your questions to me directly in the chat window. My name is Pooja Kanani. Direct all your questions to me, and I will make sure that as many of them are answered by Dr. Varke and Ashish. So, Ashish, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And I think this is a very good day today. Being a DNA day, wishing you all a very happy DNA day. And the topic today we are going to talk about is running the right way and the role of the nature. That's the role of genomics. It's never nature versus nurture. It is always nature along with nurture. That's what we're going to tell you today about, and that's how we should look at ourselves in this lockdown situation that we are in. Pardon, there is some technical glitch. Yes. So if we look at if you can look at the screens, these are the 10 fastest marathon runners, men and women. And if you look at their timings and everything in the A-lister marathons, they're amazing. The very coincidence here is that they all come from an Eastern African region. Do you think it is a coincidence? I really don't think this is a coincidence, and there is much more to learn about why only there is an Eastern African dominance, in this running, field. So, why I would like to take you away from that slide and want to explain you about how it works. We call this as a golden trinity of health, where environment, your lifestyle, and your biology. Three play a very important role. So the environment you're living in, so if you're living in a suburban area or very urban place, you cannot actually control much of the environment. But if you can modify your lifestyle based on your biological requirements. So your biology is nothing but the processes that go into you, and those are all governed by your genes and DNA. So let me just take you through about how this biology actually works. Now we all know that we are humans. Humans are made up of cells. Cells have something called as nucleus, in which there are chromosomes, and chromosomes have something called as your genetic material called DNA. And these DNA, are nothing but sequence of ATGC, and these genes are responsible for a lot many things you see, right from your external as well as internal processes, your fitness ability, your nutrition, your disease risk, and a lot many more. For a simple example, I can tell you here is, look at this. There is only a single nucleotide change in the sequence of the gene, and that is leading to the curly hair instead of straight hair. So a single change could make you hero, could make you zero, or could make you more powerful, could make you weaker, etc., etc. And how do we look at these now is in terms of running. So let's look at running and genetics. What we can tell you about running, like when we asked you to fill the questionnaire, we could figure out that around 30% people do not, around 70% people do not know that there is a genetic contribution to your running. Only 30% of you were knowing that there is a genetic component to running, and that's very important to learn. So, what is that your genes govern? Your endurance, whether you are an endurance person or a power person, whether your flexibility, your injury risk, your lactate threshold, and your aerobic capacity. All these five elements, basically, these are five elements which have 150 gene variations that determine your athletic potential. So when let's delve into each one of these. Let's talk about endurance. Like we know what is endurance is. Endurance is one's ability to sustain a physical activity for a longer time and with a minimal discomfort. Now, there are around 25 genes which are responsible, which are involved in this kind of functioning of your body. One of the very prime important gene is ACT3N gene. I'm going to the gene level because I wanted to understand that how a difference in your gene can make you an endurance athlete. So if suppose you have a genotype of RR or RX, this will make an alpha actin 3 protein, which is responsible for type 2 twitch fibers. So this is making you burst power in smaller amounts, like a power burst in a smaller time interval. Hence, you can become a sprint athlete if you have this variation. But you have an X kind of variation, then you can become an endurance athlete because alpha actin 3 is not required for your longer runs. So lower the frequency in sprint and power athletes and higher the frequency in aerobic and endurance athletes. What does this mean? Like if we look at the numbers statistically, around 15 to 16% of the population across has this variation, which makes them runners like you. So every runner will have, if they're the timing and they're competitive in nature and they're doing things genetically, if they're this, they have a greater advantage to have a better timing, lesser discomfort while they're running. If we look at the next um, trait, which we call it as aerobic capacity trainability. Now, which is in your simple words, your VO2 max. You know that VO2 max is the amount of oxygen utilized by the body during the exercise. Now, and there are around 23 genes responsible for your aerobic capacity trainability. I'm saying it trainability because even if you have a variation which is not in your favor, this trait is trainable. You can work upon, do certain kind of exercises more that will help you increase your VO2 max. But you need to know what is your genetic makeup like for this, and then you can plan upon the your training of your aerobic capacity. For example, to simply explain you, if there is a 1 liter engine car and if there is a 2 liter engine car, which one will go farther? The 2 liter engine car ये ज़्यादा आगे जाएगी because it has more fuel. Similarly, as the oxygen is our fuel, we need that more to without making much of discomfort, we can go for a longer period of run. Let's talk about another important thing, which is lactate threshold. Now, lactate threshold is very interesting. Around 23 genes are responsible for lactate threshold. And what happens initially when we start running? it is the aerobic metabolism. Like, we utilize more of oxygen, and the metabolism is all revolving around uh, the oxygen intakes. Then what happens? Slowly, the body looks into its own reserved stored carbohydrates. This this results into an anaerobic metabolism, where glucose is used as an energy source and lactase is the byproduct. So your stored glucose is used and it is converted into lactate. Now this lactate, if it increases in your body up to a point, then it can cause fatigue. It can cause fatigue and you can't run for a longer time. How? I'll explain you with an example over here. If we look at athlete number 2, so for the first 11 kilometer, 12 kilometer, his lactate starts shooting up, and it goes up to around, say, 10 or 11 molecules per liter. And whereas the lactate in the athlete 3 is around, say, 4. So athlete 3 is in a better position right now to run without getting fatigue than athlete 2. And this is all governed by your genes. Need not worry if you have a variation that does not have great lactate metabolism. You can still train more with high intensity trainings, interval trainings, to push this threshold up. But it is very important to understand that what is your lactate threshold and how you need to train accordingly so that you do not get fatigued more. Let's go to the next part where we talk about an injury. So the injury risk, like Achilles tendon, is very common in your endurance kind of sports. Now, if we look at Achilles tendon injuries, what happens? It is around 5 to 12% of the running injuries is encountering for this, and there are around two genes which are responsible for making collagen and a certain type of a protein, which again regulates the tissue response to the mechanical load you give. Now, variation in these genes can make you prone to Achilles tendinopathy more. So, it is important to know whether you are prone to this kind of injuries or not. And if yes, we have to train you accordingly. I think Dr. Shweta will throw a bit more light on that. That we can train you or give you stretches or exercises that will reduce your chances to get some kind of Achilles tendinopathy. Similarly, like your muscle injuries such as hamstring pulls are also influenced by genetics. If you look at your injury mechanism, they are majorly governed by how your genetics are. Now, how do we improve the running time with the genetics? If we look at these, I'm going to show you a case study of Mr. Tahir, where let's have a look at his case study, where Tahir is around 37 years old and is a distance runner. He does not have a supervised coach, but his focus is on mileage. Now, when we look at the genomics aspect of it, Mr. Tahir has a very good endurance profile. His aerobic capacity is average. Yellow means average, not very great, but yeah. But his risk for muscle injuries, ACL, lactate threshold, and resistance to muscle training is very high. So he needs a special kind of training strategy to overcome these genetic shortcomings of findings. The secondary genetic findings, when you look at the nutrition aspect, his caffeine metabolism is very good. And we look at another aspect of it is where the lactose and the gluten metabolisms are poor, which may work against him by giving him some weight gain. So what we should do is, when we look at this, his training strategy was formed with, there was lack of strength training, which was replaced with equal importance to strength training in the running, because he needs to train for his increased lactate threshold and improve his aerobic capacity. Then at speed intervals were added to the routine again to improvise upon the lactate threshold. Recovery strategies were made because his injury risk was very high. So there were certain strategies that were advised with physiokinesis, which helped him remain injury free throughout his season. And his dietary advice, as his caffeine metabolism was good, he was advised to take a coffee shot before running. It may not work for you, but it worked for him. So whether it works for you, it does not work for you, it also depends on your genetics. Again, gluten and lactose substitutes along with the micronutrient supplements or including them in their daily diets, were given to him. What was the outcome? Tahir had run his first marathon and his timing was around 1 hour 53 or 40, 1 hour 48 minutes, where, and it was, and in the next season, he ran Tata Marathon, where his personal best is now 1 hour 37 minutes. Within 3 months, of this training strategy, he could reduce around 10 minutes in his running time, which is a remarkable achievement. This was possible because he knew all about his genetics. His whole training strategy was based upon his genetics. That's how it helped him, improve upon his training time. So let's have a bird's eye view on what the training, what fitness genomics can tell you all about. Fitness genomics can tell you about whether you are an endurance athlete or a power athlete, whether you have poor endurance, whether your lactate threshold is good. So your training can be adjusted along with it. Injury risk, not only Achilles tendinopathy, we can also look at ligament injuries, tennis elbow, other muscle injuries, rotator cuff injuries. Then we also can look at the flexibility profile and the exercise response for muscle damage and recovery, whether you need a resistance training, what kind of resistance training needs to be done based on your genetics, and how is the fat loss response to the exercise that can help you. So this is all about knowing your own self, your own genetics, to improve upon your timing, your competition achievements, and that will help. So knowing nature, what are you made up of, is very, very important to reach the desired goal. And that's for today from my side.
Yes. So thanks, Ashish, for that presentation. We will now begin the question and answer session. So I request all of you to send in your questions to me directly via the chat window. My name is Pooja Kanani. So please select me in the chat box and then type in your questions. So I'll go ahead and ask the first question to Dr. Shweta. So, Dr. Shweta, my question is, how early in one's running journey can they take the genetic test and apply it?
Uh, Thank you for asking this question. And I would first begin I'll answer your question, but I would also like to thank everyone who has joined in this seminar today. Most of them are my clients, my friends, very close family people, and also co-runners. So thank you very much for joining in with this initiative. I appreciate you taking your time for yourself and also for updating your knowledge on the International DNA Day. So answering your question, I feel that DNA test can be done. First of all, once you start getting into running, that's a process itself. I wouldn't suggest that this has to be done something right at the beginning once you decide that you want to start running. But if you are running fairly well and you are following a certain training program, and what happens usually in a typical runner's journey is that they start off running and somewhere the competitive kida kicks in him, and they want to push in a little bit more, maybe jump distances, like within a year jump from half to full or to ultras. And then there is a setback because probably there is a lack of training, probably there is a lack of structure in the program. There's a lack of strengthening in their program. And somewhere it is kind of like they reach a plateau stage, and somewhere a frustration also sets in ki अरे मेरा सब टू ही नहीं हो रहा है यार, that's kind of a thing. Sometimes people do all the right things. They are coaching under good coaches who develop good generic plans. But since we all are different, every person is different, our DNAs make us everything, from our nail to our hair to the way color of our eyes, which is external. Even our internal makeup is different. So I feel that when you reach a point, probably a couple of years down you're running and you are looking at pushing into yourself to or finding certain answers as to why things are not working, This can also be one of the ways to get it. But when it comes to maybe if you want to get your child into sports or any typical sport, I feel I would suggest that when you want to push them professionally, that is one time that you should get this done, because then you can actually tailor make a excellent program for him or her to excel in his athletic performance.
Yeah.
That would be my
So, yes, Dr. Shweta, there's a follow-up question from Mr. Ashish Thakur. He's telling us that he's about to begin his training for running,
right.
and he's asking whether first, is it important to know that whether he can be a marathon runner before he begins the journey?
Uh, the thing is that, again, I would say is that take it by it comes, like it is if you can, or if you would want to really go that way, maybe age matters, like it also depends what's your age and what you're getting into at what point of time, and what are you looking at. If you're just getting into running just to get healthy and fit, what is the goal? That is also very important. And the body also gives you signs. I feel that it is better to first start running and then do the test. And if I don't know, if anybody has another view, Ashish, if you
Yeah.
have, you can share.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I have a slight contrasting view to you, Dr. Shweta. I think earlier the better. The more you know about yourselves,
Right.
better you can, strategize at the first go. So I think when I spoke about Tahir's study, I said that, his first marathon was 1 hour, 43 minutes. It was his first marathon. I forgot to mention that. So first marathon, sub 2,
Half marathon,
and
right?
yeah, first half marathon it was sub 2, and then when we look at now, his another second one with the strategic planning based on genomics has given a lot of boost to himself, that he's now very charged up and even running at home now. So that's another story, but yeah, earlier the better. You can actually take care of the injury part if you know about, and the kind of training you need to get to some level, right? So a beginner can have different goals, I agree with you, but if that's the passion that's driving you to run,
Yes,
knowing
exactly.
a
I,
bit
I
more
feel
about
it's
a few.
related more towards what you're looking at, in terms of
Exactly.
if you're going into that level ki I want to start running and within a year I want to, crack that sub two. Yeah, then a structured program, and obviously prevention is better than cure, and it's always better to start off with testing yourself first and then go on. But
Exactly.
I think most of the people who are here are already into running for quite a few years now, is what I believe. Yeah, most of the
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
So we have one more question from Miss Raji Bhattacharya, and her question is, how does one find the primary and secondary genetic findings? So I guess I think she's trying to ask about the process of getting these results. So Ashish, do you want to answer that?
Well, the process is very simple. You just have, it's just a blood collection, and then rest of the things are taken care by the lab. We extract the DNA. We look into the around 7 lakh data points we scan it for, and we look at the relevant genes which I've already mentioned in the presentation, that we look around 150 variation in those genes, and then we generate a report of fitness. Similarly, there's another report that is more focused on a nutrition, which not in detail was discussed today, but maybe in future we'll be discussing that too, which will then give you a good combination of insights about your fitness abilities and your nutritional abilities. So I think when both of them are combined in a way, it will do wonders for whoever is taking the test. So it is just a blood sample away, and it takes around 4 to 6 weeks to generate the report. Then once the report is there, plan can be made based on the report's findings that come out.
Okay. Uh, Thanks for answering that. I think the next one is directed to Dr. Shweta. And this is from Prashant, and he's asking that in his experience, it is the first 2 to 3 kilometers and the last few kilometers that are typically tough, which generally impact the overall timing. Any advice to make a consistent experience?
Uh, uh, so again, what I believe is that this is again a starting issue, and also probably, and when you are at the fag end of your marathon. So there are two systems which are operating in our body, as Ashish mentioned in this presentation. It's about the aerobic capacity. Okay, this is one where your body is relying on oxygen as its major source of fuel for you to fuel your runs and for your muscles. When you reach to the fag end of your marathon, you actually the body starts becoming going into an anaerobic mode where it doesn't rely on oxygen anymore, and it relies on its inbuilt mechanism to just push itself. Okay, now this aerobic mechanism trying to push again is comes under the aspect of training. Maybe your body needs a little bit more of conditioning in terms of getting your body more warmed up. So maybe spending more time getting your body warmed up to that level where it can start using oxygen is so maybe XYZ might need 2 minutes to get warmed up, but probably your body needs about 10 to 15 minutes to get warmed up to get into that cycle. So I feel this is something which you have to include in your training. The second part of the anaerobic metabolism, what I see typically in runners, is that they get bored of doing hill repeats and speed intervals because they feel that completing the distance is more important rather than but actually these two ways, that is doing your hill repeats and doing your speed intervals, actually helps you to train your anaerobic method of your metabolism or using when you are doing your exercises. So these are the two things which you need to focus on when you are going to be training. So I think you need to tweak your training a bit, a little bit, so that you can work on these things.
Okay. Thanks for
You
answering
can,
that.
I can also have Heta who can answer this question. So if you can, Heta can also unmute herself and answer this question. Heta is our exercise physiologist at Physiokinesis. So she helps to design all these programs for us. So Heta, if you have another answer for this, you can answer.
Sure, ma'am. I would like to add that the second half, as you said about the metabolism, I also feel that there are two fatigue systems that set in later when you
Right.
are about to finish a marathon. So it can either be a muscular fatigue, which is, right. So I don't know about his problem, but it could also be because of muscle cramping or calves cramping, or it can be the central fatigue where, the brain is like, okay, fine, I don't want to do it anymore. It's just for the sake of finishing. I just want to finish just finish the complete the finish line. So something like that. So I think even that is trainable, like cramps and all that. If you have good nutrition, I think that is how you can overtake that particular issue. And the mental fatigue, it's all about pushing yourself harder during your workout strategies, workout training plans. So that's how I
Yeah.
feel.
Okay. So the next one is a very interesting question, and it is from Miss Sarika Saman. And she's asked that does it mean that post taking genetic tests it will help us avoid injuries and improve performance? How will it be different from current efforts taken in extra strengthening or diet, especially for better performance? So if I had to rephrase a question, can I just assume that my genetics is poor and for all the factors that influence running, and then take it from there and improve everything? So I guess I'd want Dr. Shweta and Ashish both to give their answers to this question.
So, as far as genetics is concerned, I think, assuming that you have poor genetics is not a solution. It's better to know. Of course, on take you have been running for such a long time and might have accomplished things to hard training and conditioning that you have gone through, making necessary dietary changes. But those are all generic and were based on trial and error methods that you might have taken through and might have taken a longer time for you to reach a certain goal that you had set. Now, if you would know beforehand about your nutrition aspect and the fitness aspect, your strengths, like where do you need more training, whether is it your aerobic training that needs to be going more, is the lactate threshold that needs to be increased, is it your injury that needs to be sorted out, is the warm up needs to be done properly so that you remain injury free? What kind of diet is it? Will something like caffeine will boost your performance or not? All those things you will be able to figure out through genomics reports that will again form a blueprint for your trainer or your guide to or your mentor to make your very personalized training plan. So once you get what is fit for you, will again help you improve upon your timing, your performance, and remaining. The most important thing after running half marathons and marathon is to remain injury free for a longer time, and not go into the cycle of getting injuries and then missing out on something, and then again you stop your training, all those things. So Dr. Shweta, your views on this?
Yes. So Sarika, what I would like to tell you is that uh, what happens is that as I know you, Sarika does follow a very structured program, which with the group that she runs with, and there is a fair balance amount of strengthening and workouts that she does. And also when it comes to training for a marathon, she also does follow a particular diet regime. So as such, she's ticked all the boxes in terms of what all needs to get into marathon training. What a genetic test for a person who is at your level, Sarika, will help you is to understand as to one is also, maybe if I assume that your genetic test tells you that all this is good, so this gives you the confidence that yes, you can push yourself in this direction. Okay, you can. And if you can come to know that what is the reason of you getting injured very often, or getting certain injury patterns which are repeated often in spite of doing some strengthening, so even we can find out these kind of small kind of things which will come out of your thing, whether how is your injury response, how is your lactate threshold, your response to fatigue. All this will come to know, and then we can tweak in your programs. Also, there is a lot of information about the nutrition, about the nutrigenomics that you can get. So whatever diet you are taking, how is your body responding to it? And eventually the other information that is long term in terms of not with respect to running, but it also gives you information about the lifestyle diseases that you may have when you grow older. So you can also start taking precaution and take care of that even right now. So this is some additional information that you can get. So it can, if you are looking to power up, if you are looking to push yourself harder and go in for a sub 4 marathon, maybe this will give you like a proper blueprint as to how to tackle your marathons ahead.
Right. So thanks for answering that. We have one more question from Mr. Vasudev, and his question is: he has been training for a year, and previously he had never experienced one, but in his full marathon he got a very bad cramp. So is that something that is related to genetic, or is it more of a training issue? So I would want Akash here, who is our fitness expert at the Gene Box, to answer if at all there is a genetic component to cramping up. And then Dr. Shweta, you can answer how that can be avoided with training.
Hi. So yeah, there is definitely a genetic component as well to cramping. What I can understand is that this was your first full marathon that you were running. So what can happen is that depending on your lactate threshold, your muscles can cramp up if there's a lot of accumulation of lactate, right? So I think Dr. Shweta and Dr. Heta can stress on this fact a bit better on how to improve that fact. But given your lactate threshold, that can definitely influence your ability to get cramped or not get cramped during a run. So definitely, if you go on and improve your lactate threshold based on what your genetic report is telling you, I can state it fairly that you can definitely improve that situation.
Dr. Shweta?
Again, I would like to ask Vasudev, when did you get this cramp? Was it right from the beginning or during the end?
So, Mr. Vasudev, I'm going to unmute you for a bit, and you can probably respond to Dr. Shweta's question.
Hi, Dr. Shweta.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi,
yes.
good evening. So, so as I told you, I've been training for a year, so I've never experienced cramps. So this is at a particular time in the TMM while I was running. So this is about 35 kilometers, 36 kilometers
Okay,
post the hill.
right. So again, I would like to say that in your training, you must have done max what, 33 or 35?
Oh, I think I did about 36.
Okay, okay.
36, I think, so I did 36 twice.
Okay, okay. So it is again, I think it was your first marathon, and also I think that at the day on the day of the marathon, also how your body responds with all the with all your tensions and your stress and how you're performing, even that plays a lot of role in your performance, and you never know, like so, and also your body. Probably what I can guess is maybe even as a first marathon, I know you've performed really well. So the stamina and the energy and the force that has gone in the initial kilometers, maybe the fatigue kind of took over at that point of time, and it struck at that time. It is, I think it's just about training over a period of time. You will get over this. And Heta, if you can add something on this.
I think yeah, you covered the points, and Akash as well spoke about nutrition as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think nutrition is something that you need to work on. Maybe that a little bit of fuel just before that would have helped it, a little bit of electrolytes and salts. Maybe if you would have started a little bit more. So maybe planning your, so also once you know this, you also know when to fuel yourself. So otherwise randomly, just because somebody said that you have to have something after 10 and after something after 15 and something after 21 and something after 35, you can make your own customized plan as to what works for you once you know what is your lactate threshold and how your body is responding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're almost running out of time. So what I'd like to request all of y'all is that there's a feedback form that I have, and the link is entered in the chat box. So I'd like you all to just uh, fill that out, please, so we can understand what to do better. And in the meantime, Dr. Shweta and Dr. Heta, so we have another seminar, another session that is uh, coming up next week. So could you please give us a sneak peek into what the next webinar will entail?
Right. So I'll just share. I need to share my screen. So yeah. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So since in this seminar we spoke about nature, the next seminar is going to be nurture. So how can we work once we know about our genetics, or if we try to know how can we tweak it in the terms of training. So physiokinesis has come up with a smart lab which is powered by Gate On is a company which is based in Delhi, and they are our partners for our running analysis lab. And that's what we have kind of come up with. So what the smart lab stands for is sports science, movement analysis, rehabilitation and training. So other than the analysis part, we were all doing it objectively in terms of measuring in our own way, and what the Gate lab will be giving us is it'll be giving us numbers as to what wrong is happening in terms of your technique, which is coming in the way of your running performance. So we have introduced just before the virus struck us, we had set up our gate lab, which is in at Physiokinesis Thane, and before the launch, Corona launched itself. So we will launch this once we open up, and we're offering this analysis to all our runners. We did a trial with few of our runners, and the information that we get will definitely help us to improve on our technique. So basically, this is the system where you can see there are 4 cameras, one in the front, 3 on each side, where you can analyze the runner. And that's how it works. These are high-speed cameras, and the software analyzes, and we get the exact measurement. So the software which is with us has been has been prepared in collaboration with University of Wisconsin, where they have a section, or they have a university just for doing running work. So this is all their work, and they have analyzed about the reports of more than 1,000 runners, and that's how they have got the software, and where we can most of the problems that can occur in running. So general patterns that we see are, a collapser. A collapser is when the knee is actually coming down or in the center. A weaver who basically tries to put one foot in front of the other. It's also called as a crossover gait. This also gives us a lot of information about how their core and their glute activation is, and then we can work on this. There is a bouncer who does a lot of vertical movement. This also puts a lot of impact on your foot. So people who have foot pain and knee pain can also, this can also be because of the technique. There is glute amnesia, is people who don't use their glutes enough. Okay, they are not firing their glutes. When you see them running, you see that their leg doesn't move backwards at all. So these are the patterns that you can see. And overstrider, which is the most common thing in runners, which causes a lot of ITB issues. That is one muscle which keeps firing up, and this is what the pattern that we see. So it gives us all the angulations, and then we offer you, as we said, the SMART. So we offer you the measurement, the analysis, the rehab, and the training for you to become a better runner, so that you can run the right way, which is for you. So this is what we're going to cover in the next marathon. And the same way, that's how Dr. Heta worked with Tahir also. We had his genetic report, we had his, his fitness level, and that's how, marrying both the things and then giving a performance like what he did in this marathon is something what we have achieved because of the Smart Lab. So this is what we are going to present, a little more depth in detail about different injuries, because most of you all expressed your wish to know more about injury-free running. So the next workshop or the next webinar is going to be on injury-free running, and how doing your own analysis will help you to know more about this. So that's
so Dr. Shweta, that does sound very interesting. Ashish, if I could ask you to share your screen again with us, please. And if you could go to the last slide, yes. So as Ashish and Dr. Shweta both mentioned that, fitness genomics, if you get the report, you'll get a very clear picture about your blueprint, right from your injury risk to the fact that whether you're an endurance athlete or a power athlete, what your flexibility looks like, which areas in your running journey do you need to improve upon more. So, in case you have any more questions or would like to know more about the genomics test, please get in touch with Dr. Shweta Varke. Her email address and her phone number are there on the screen right now, so you can make a note of that. We do hope that all of you join us back in the next webinar, which will happen sometime next week. We will keep you posted. And the feedback link has been shared on the WhatsApp group that has been created. So you can please click on that link and share your feedback so we can improve ourselves. Finally, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and hope hope you learned something today from the experts. And yeah, so in these times of pandemic, stay home, stay safe, and especially stay away from those WhatsApp forwards. So yeah, Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Thank you very much. Bye.